Folks, we are live from Africa. You're going to see my friend Oabona here. Welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Gary, and glad to be here and glad to be talking about this massive project.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. I always feel like when the book launches, it's the right time, and I think the world needs this book. In fact, I'm going to show everybody. You might have a physical copy. If you do, hold it up. But I also want to show folks, this is one of my favorite covers ever. It just looks beautiful. And hey, Tanisha, tag my friend Tunji, because Tunji's from Africa and he loves business in Africa. And this whole book is about African entrepreneurship. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how this book even started happening inside you?
Yeah. First, let me appreciate you, Gary, and your team for assisting us with the book, with all the publishing and positioning the book. It's really been quite a journey. I know I got your name through Strategic Coach, which has also been quite phenomenal in readying me for business.
Yeah.
I've been a Strategic Coach now for about 8 years. And then I had about some of the coach guys that had written books through your inspiration. So I just like to appreciate you. I appreciate Travis. I appreciate Michaela. We've gone through 18 months of drudgery.
Hey, listen, we're celebrating. It's like the baby was born. The baby was born. Yeah.
So in terms of the book and the big why, and as you rightly said, African, we need to tell our stories. And
that's right.
I these days, since I started writing the book, whenever I visit countries and our big neighbor here, South Africa, I check the bookstores. There's just not enough stories about Africa. And importantly, countries are built on the back of entrepreneurs. So it's very important that someone like me, who have started from very, very low beginnings, actually shares the stories of how we went about it. So that is really phenomenal, how this whole thing started. And also the story of grit. If you recall from the book, I talk about my mother, who went through really rough in terms of a divorce and a very abusive husband. He was an alcoholic. But I mean, I know everybody talks about their mother, but I think my mother is a great example of what grit is, endurance. What's interesting is that it's not just about endurance. She's late now. She passed on 2 years ago. But what's important is that even within that grit, I've seen her dancing. I've seen her visit her friends. I've seen the beautiful aspect of an African support to a family member who is in distress, to the extent that doesn't pull her down, which is what really we learned from her. I mean, she's managed to take 4 kids as a single mother through up to university, and now we are financially independent and purposeful lives because of that great woman. So I think it's important that we link these things to family and the things that we pick up from the early years of our lives. Importantly, also is the country for which I've been born into. This country is one of those great secrets that the world does not know about. This is a country that in the 60s, when I was born 4 years later after independence, 66, it was one of the poorest countries in the world. It relied on the UK, our colonizer, for budget purposes. But in 25 years, it grew to be one of the richest countries in Africa. And it was driving double-digit growth rates. And it's simply because of the culture, the democracy that's very innate in how we do things in Botswana. So that's the context of how I grew up. And I share that in the book so that readers can appreciate how an environment is important for your ultimate thriving as well. And obviously, Botswana, now it comes Africa and all the culture that I discuss in the book as well. So I don't know if there's any other aspect that you'd like me to elucidate.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I think that's super powerful, unpacking the inner game. And I know in the book, you talk about this balance between personal life and business. And why don't you talk about that? Because, a lot of times we see entrepreneurs that are crushing it in one area, but they don't have that balance.
Yeah. Kari, I've seen entrepreneurs here. I've had lots of discussions with colleagues at Strategic Coach. These, as you know, these are multi-million-dollar guys, sometimes $1 billion guys. And through the coaching of Dan, and why Strategic Coach was so timely is that we have our serious downs as entrepreneurs. We are workaholics. We are driven by success, sometimes in a very unhealthy manner. So for me, I've always tried to balance my entrepreneurship journey in a way that I build well-being across in terms of how I do things. So that has been people always ask me, where do you get the energy? Where do you get this? How you seem to be, you seem to have the step. And I was like, it's because I invest in elements that are important for me to carry on being having energy and vitality. So that is why in the book, and a few years ago, I came with this formula called Joy Rep and the concept of EntreHappiness. You can be an entrepreneur and maintain your happiness streak. And this also, when I researched and read about, people like Anthony Bourdain, who committed suicide, if you recall, Kate Spade, these are highly successful billionaires who had so much stress. Even the founder of Airbnb, Brian Chesky, if you saw his podcast where he was almost in tears. These are guys that are, he's a $1 billion man, but you are saying, I'm still not happy. So that was the motivation to communicate to the young people to say, it's not all about money. They live a purposeful life. You got to build these guards. And Joy Rep, if you recall, stands for continue having the joys of life. Make sure you have strong social support in terms of relationships. Engage in an occupation that aligns to who you are. The unique ability aspect that comes from coach. And lastly, live a purposeful life in terms of things that are bigger than yourselves. So that is how the Joy Rep is called to true success. And I wrap them up in terms of the EntreHappiness to say, when you are an entrepreneur, make sure that these things actually happen.
Wow. I'll tell you what, man. I think a lot of people are watching this, and here's what I think. I think regardless of the culture and the language, they can absolutely relate. Right? Right?
Yeah. No, it's pervasive. It runs across. Look, one of the things that I also trying to communicate through the book is our unique African cultures. One of the things that sustained my mother, Carrie, is during the strives with the divorce, we're struggling with kids. It was, I recall very well the support from his brothers. He had two elder brothers who used to come, and we used to go for holidays to their places. My mother was born across the border in South Africa, and my mother was got married on the Botswana side. So we used to go for holidays across to South Africa to visit my cousins and so forth. And the support, she was a teacher, so she had a lot of support. So the teaching space also provided support, because we used to have weekends where we visit the other teachers, have tea, play with their kids. So it was and that is very much encapsulated in the African culture of Ubuntu. And in the book, I do elucidate on how Ubuntu simply translating into I am because we are. In Botswana, we say you are a human because of others. That's and just to put a little bit of controversy here, Carrie, is that looking around the world, I think we've gone richer with modernization, but there's a little bit of a battle when it comes to well-being. And the world is looking for solutions. And why I included this in the book is to also say to the global world, Africa has got its own philosophies and wisdoms that are quite ancient that we can put on the table. That is why relationships, that's why they're part of Joy Rep, and that is why in our culture is extremely important. And sometimes we try to, when we modernize, we think, connecting with your grandmother, with your grandfather, with your uncles, those play a fundamental role in terms of your support base and your ability to thrive. So those are quite important, and I also highlight
I love that. I love that. Well, listen, I don't have a picture of me holding lions by the tail. That's you got to tell me about that picture, man, because that's
I think the story, we'll keep referring to coach because that's the one common denominator. When I used to go there every 3 months to coach program, entrepreneurial, one of the super entrepreneurial coaching programs on earth, through Dan. So what used to happen is that I'll tell my fellow entrepreneurs about the business. As you might know, I've got 4 businesses. One of them is farming, which is called Manenzo, where we've got 1,000 hectares of a cattle breeding program. So in these farms, we get lions and wild dogs and leopards eating basically feeding on our cattle. So one of the guys said, man, you got a business where lions eat away your assets.
That's good. The lions. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So the motivation was that we have unique businesses as well, which are different from someone who's from Chicago, who's from Toronto, and these need to be shared. And then we used to, one time I shared the story of how we're chasing the lions out of the farm with my son and the fellow, what they call the Bushmen or the Sand people, which is a very powerful, unique experience of actually chasing and following and tracking lions, which is again very unique. So why the story of me holding those lions is because in some of the hotspots for tourism in Botswana, which is the Victoria Falls, I don't know if you heard about the Victoria Falls, on the edge of the Victoria Falls, which is one of the 7 wonders of the world, there's a place where they keep these African lions, and basically they're trying to introduce them to humans. And these ones you can play around with. The ones on the farm, you can't do that. I'll be eaten alive.
That is crazy.
So these ones are for people like you, Kerry, who go there and want to touch a lion. So these are fairly tamed for people to just have exposure in terms of the size of a male lion, size of it. So that's how the picture came about.
I want to connect you with one of my friends here. I'm going to give him a shout out because when I do that, he'll share this live stream out to all of his people too. But this is a young man who says using African proverbs to address the mess, and he mentors young men, but he's from Africa. I'm going to connect him to you because I think there's some, when you're part of Strategic Coach, there's collaborations. I feel like there's people watching today that need the African perspective that Oabona's teaching. How many companies in America, in the Western world, would benefit by some of your book talking about the inner game and make them more culturally relevant? Anytime you get outside your own, headspace, I feel like there's new perspectives. So let's talk about that for a moment. Why should a small business in America say, you know what, we're going to buy 20 copies and we're going to go through this as a team? How do you think that would make a company in the West better?
I think, as you rightly said, as I said earlier, the culture of especially when you look at the United States and Europe, they are premised on the Judeo-Christian for their value system. Right. Basically, it's between Athens and Jerusalem. You got your wisdom in terms of science from Athens, and you got a lot of your behavioral and morals from Jerusalem. Now, unfortunately, as Africans, because of colonization, we tended to speed up to take up what the Judeo-Christian philosophies were. And it's not a matter of either or, it's a matter of, are there other alternatives? And I have to say, Kerry, the fundamentals of the African wisdom is actually experiencing a bit of a renaissance right now, because I've been going to a couple of conferences and they are rooted on, I gave you an example of Ubuntu, which is actually across a lot of the sub-Saharan Africa.
And that's spelled Ubuntu.
Yes, Ubuntu. Correct. You got it.
I've heard that before. Yeah.
So that's a very, very powerful. That's a very powerful wisdom, which is ingrained on how we do our stuff. Unfortunately, we don't have enough writing on it. That's why people like well-read like Kerry don't even know about it.
Right.
So I've also elucidated on it when I was at the Strategic Coach, and the guys were quite wowed with the phenomenon. And supporting that, as you said, with my friend who wrote the book also from Africa about using the African proverbs. They are, and as you can see in the book, I do touch on various proverbs from Africa as part of the touch on the book, just to show the world that we have also quite deep So proverbs. So I touch on those as well. So those in terms of an entrepreneur in the global world, I would really advise that you also access these proverbs. When you read the book is not enough. And guess what? Due to your influence, Gary, I'm already thinking about the second book.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, they say book writing is a very, you get a bit addicted to it. So the second book is going to be focused on drawing from the African well for becoming a happier entrepreneur and generally becoming a happier person. So we are quite lost right now with research work, and we'll obviously be coming to you later after the baseline is quite nicely set in terms of packaging the book. But that's my next book. Just give you another example. People like Daniel, I forget his name now. He's an anthropologist from Harvard. They are busy doing research work on ancient African tribes in Tanzania. They're called the Hadza tribe. They are not contaminated. They're still living in their old selves. And guess what people like Daniel are doing? They are borrowing the wisdoms from Africa, from these African societies. And I like people laughing when I mentioned that, they were asking the Hadza tribes about exercise. And the gentleman said, "What is exercise?"
Right. Because they're running away from the lions, right?
Because they're active. They're active every day. There's no blood pressure in their society. There's no sugar diabetes because they eat good food, which is, if you recall from the book, I talk about the 8 keys that support JRAP, which touch on sleep, how important sleep is, how important real wholesome food is, how important putting your body through stress. I talk about hormesis, cold showers, things like that, which are quite important in terms of the immune system and putting on the right, triggering your endorphins and stuff like that, your dopamines, to make sure that you're always on top of the game. So all these are found in these Asian tribes. Even Botswana, I found the research work that was done in the early 60s. In the early 60s on our Bushman tribes on the northwestern part of Botswana, where again they were learning about the wisdom of the people that were living those nice ordinary lives. Just another statistics they did, because you Americans, you like checking out things and your statistics like your basketball game. So they did. So America currently is not one of the happiest countries in the world. Through many statistics that are done. And actually, the latest happiness report, America is dropping in terms of happiness compared to other countries. So they checked the happiness levels of the Hadza ancient tribe in Tanzania. And guess what? Despite the fact that they don't live long, they live very hazardous life, they were 50% happier. Carrie. They are 50% happier because the communities are strong. The social support is strong. The family is still strong. They are active every day. So really, although, as you said, we might be different people, but in the end, there are basics that needs to happen. The body needs to be active. Sitting like you and I right now for 8 hours is bad for us. It's shortening our lives. Eating a lot of sugar-based foods, it kills us. Blood pressure was not known many years ago. They even said that, as another example, they found that these Asian tribes are 14 times more active physically every day compared to us. We're supposed to know better.
Oh yeah. No, listen, I echo what you're saying. I just got back from France.
Yeah, France. Yeah.
And I was cycling a lot, and you love it. It becomes natural, and you miss it. You miss it when you're not active. So I think you're dropping gold, man. Like, this is really good. I feel like the world needs to hear more about this book. So I'm going to encourage people. We got a lot of people watching from all over, and some of the team and some of your friends from Africa. I would encourage people, tag a CEO, tag a business owner, even a team member, an employee who says, look, let's benefit from some of this African wisdom. Let's do that. So as we kind of land the plane here, I know you mentioned book 2. That's cool. That's cool. But let's look at your businesses really quick here, because I think part of the reason why we like working with you is it's not theory. In other words, you're doing this right now, and the proof is in your companies and your people. So talk to me about some of your companies. You mentioned the cattle. Don't you have like do you have diamond mines or something crazy? What do you have?
No, Botswana is renowned for diamond, Kerry. For diamonds, as I said earlier, Botswana was very poor in the 60s when we got independence. It was actually the bottom 5 poorest countries in the world. Within 25 years, it was one of the fastest growing countries in the world in terms of GDP at about 13%. So, and prudently managed. And if you look at our founding fathers, I always say, and this is something I'll share in the book, I am definitely sure why Botswana is one of the most peaceful, tranquil. I mean, you look at the peace index, it's purely because our forefathers were not as educated. They were very grounded on Ubuntu, Kerry. They felt for their people, they felt for their communities, and they did everything correctly in terms of not using the diamond's revenues into their own pockets like what most other countries do. They call it the resource curse in other spheres. So Botswana did not fall into this. So I am educated. I went through education and scholarships in the UK, for instance, through the diamond money, and many other thousands of Botswana went through. So it's that's what I'm saying. It's an untold story. And even the business of mining these diamonds, Botswana was ready to partner with a global giant like De Beers. I don't know if you know about De Beers. Yeah. So De Beers and Botswana established a partnership. They are called PPPs. Private public partnership, which is for me again, it's a story that has not been told about the most successful PPP arrangement in the world in terms of this. So through that, you have an enterprising entity like De Beers and Botswana government that had to look after its people, and that created quite a beautiful model. So that model is still on right now.
Really?
So my first work as an engineer when I graduated in mechanical engineering is working for the mines. So I worked for the mines. I worked for a corporate, Botswana mining company, and then thereafter, that's when the bug of entrepreneurship bit me, and I quit very peacefully. I talk about the story in the book as well about how you should always be ready to quit if you believe that your passion is elsewhere. So I quit and started this company called InnoLead. So InnoLead, and why the book is called InnoLead, because the last 25 years has been building this consulting company called InnoLead, which is the most, perhaps arguably the most successful consulting company in Botswana, built with citizens. And also, at some stage, we're about 55 employees that we had. For a small country, that's quite a big company.
That's big, yeah.
So we're basically competing with your Deloitte, with your KPMG in terms of consulting, just for our viewers to appreciate what we do. And then secondly, because, farming, I always tell people, you got to hack the system. Hacking the system, because nature was so important to me. Sure. I decided when I was 40 years old that I need to go into farming. It's also a bit of a heritage. I talk about my grandfather, who was a very successful cattle and crop farmer. So that inheritance also led me to start a farming business, which is called Manenzo. So I've got InnoLead Consulting, you got Manenzo Farming, and then the last one is that, I don't know, my good friend Salim, who talks about 10x exponential organizations. So one of the stuff that I speak on a lot across Africa is on AI and 10x technologies. So we've invested in an AI company called Orion X, which is also, he's got 2 young partners. One of the partners is my son Monty, who is an AI specialist. He's partnered with a good friend of his called Tabi, and we've acquired 40% of the business. It's still in the startup phase, and currently they're developing what they want to call the Africa First LLM model. So that's something that's terribly exciting for someone my age to be involved with these youngsters, giving the energy and stuff like that. So that's that. So we've got an AI company, and then we've got Manenzo on the farming side. And farming, I don't know how to describe it, Kerry. When you go to a farm every month to just ease, to enjoy darkness, to enjoy peace, to enjoy animals, to enjoy trees. That tree at the back of the book is called the camel thorn tree. It's very... there are lots of them in Botswana, and animals go there for shade. Animals go there for the pods, very nutritious pods. So that tree is very special, but it also signifies some of the diversity that comes of Africa, which is really good diversity. So yeah, so those are the companies, and they're doing very well. I've got to be thankful to the team at InnoLead, my partners, Chilipi and OG, and the rest of the team members that have built the business. We've got a lot of guys that left InnoLead. They form part of the community, they are also ambassadors out there, and it's really been a beautiful journey for the last 30 years with InnoLead.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Well, I can tell that I knew you were successful, and I think the success is in your people. You've obviously created some really good purpose and profit in the companies. And I'm so glad Strategic Coach introduced us, because you're right, it's a fantastic community. But I'm going to encourage people right now, get the book. The book will help you. I agree. I've traveled internationally, and sometimes you look at people who have less possessions, but more happiness.
Absolutely.
And there's something there. And so your book really gives people that plan. So, Oabona, I know as we land the plane, I'll let you have the last word here. What do you hope people experience when they buy this book and read it? What are you hoping for?
Very good question, Carrie. The first thing is that just the experience of writing a book. One philosopher, Alain de Botton, someone that is my age mate, and he's a very good philosopher. He talks about there's nothing like reading a book and you can relate to it, and it's like someone was writing about you. And although I wrote the book, when I go through it even now, I don't know, but it's almost spiritual. It's almost therapy to imprint your story for posterity.
Wow. Oh yeah.
It
will outlive you.
Absolutely. I mean, we read about Plato. We read about John Jacques Rousseau. We read about all these big names, but they are not. But they come to life, and this is important for my family, so that they can know in 100 years who Oabona is, what role did he play, is there any contributions that he can contribute to? Because sometimes the contribution does not come in your lifetime. I mean, you got a lot of philosophers who actually died, and their books only came to life 100 years later. That's
true.
So the first thing is just to encourage, especially fellow Africans and the guys living in the developed world, let's write our stories. Everybody's got a unique story. And sometimes you take your unique story for granted. And I've talked to entrepreneurs, I've talked to people who have even better stories than mine to say, put it on paper. The other thing that I wish to achieve, Gary, is the importance of coaching. Strategic Coach, I joined it in 2015 through a coach member who, again, is just a network, who said, InnoLead looks like a successful company. We had a couple of coffees, and he said, you're a candidate for coach.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how it started in 2015. And I can just say that it's been very transformative. I mean, we meet him then, you know how it's like. My coach, Gary, much Gary was also written a book, and the fellow, Julia, all those team members there, and they were all asking me, Oabona, how do you afford to come to Toronto every quarter for 2 days?
Yeah.
And I mean, who does that? Even my colleagues here who were wondering how I can invest, I said, guys, you choose your space, you choose what's important for you.
Wow.
Just every 90 days going to Toronto, for me, being able, because I'm a quick start, quick start entrepreneurs.
Oh, yeah.
Just the process of coaching, putting structures and processes are important for people like us. And that's what we achieved with Coach, and be able to create a self-managed company that can go into the future. The company should not rotate around the founder. The founder should live it. And that's why coaching is so important. And I like to emphasize that. The other aspect that I like to emphasize, that I wish colleagues to learn, is that, again, Alain de Botton says we're all broken. We all have brokenness in our lives.
Sure.
And as I say in the book, my mother went through stress. I've gone through even my, some health challenges in my life. And, you can be able to turn the tears into knowledge, into fulfillment. So in the book, I just sweep that around to show that the distresses that you have, you still have the capability to be gritty and turn them into something good. So that's what, because, and you can imagine, Kerry, in Africa, it's very tough to run a business here. I mean, the red tape, the bureaucracy. I always tell my colleagues that if I was in Canada or the States, I'm sure I'll be turning over hundreds and millions of dollars. But because of our limitations in terms of, obviously Botswana is a small country, but primarily it's because of we're still emerging in terms of entrepreneurship. And some people like us have to go through those stresses. So turning tears into knowledge is extremely important. But lastly, happiness. You can be an entrepreneur and be happy and have a long life. Because I believe that, and I say it because entrepreneurs are the backbones of conscious capitalism, Kerry. So they are needed. So you need to live long. You need to have vitality. So that is why I went to school with the EntreHappiness concept and the book and the joyride, because you cannot do all this sleeping late. Some of them get into drugs. Some of them are obsessed with success. Imagine their own well-being. So I've got this concept that I designed that I think the reader should really appreciate. We need well-being. You need to get joys back into your life. Get your relationships back into your life. Relationships could be at work. It could be your family. It could be friends and those type of things. And so hack it to make sure you have a really fulfilling. So I like to end there in terms of, because I think well-being for me is extremely important. And when in my thought leadership, when I go, speaking across Africa, I speak mainly around happiness, around leadership, and around 10x technologies. Those are, if the audience want to contact me for a speaking assignment or whatever, those are the stuff that I speak about as a thought leader. And obviously, you know that I've got a podcast now that's been running for a year, again, due to the encouragement of the coach guys. And the podcast has been doing fantastic, Kerry. Good feedback, data-driven, impactful information that comes through.
I love it. I love it. Tanisha will drop the link in our chat, but thanks so much, Oabona. It's been a blessing to get this book out in the world, and keep doing great work, my friend, okay?
Thanks very much, Kerry. And again,